When Paul contacted me and said, Larry, would you do a God moment? It's like, well, that rocked my world. So I sit down at the table with a lot of paper, and I started writing out God moments that I've been blessed with. And after about 15 pages, I thought, oh my golly, they only give me 10 minutes, right? So I picked a few out. But during that process, I wrote something on the side of my notes called A Trail of Grace. So by Paul asking me the question and inviting me here today, a trail of grace appeared. And I thought, wow, great sermon, great speech, maybe my next book. A trail of grace. So what I did is I took a few out. And there's been so many, my friends. And I know you have them in your life. And if you haven't had God moments in your life that have rocked your world and changed your life and changed other people's life, He's waiting for you. He's waiting for you to just say yes and step forward. So Paul, thank you, if you're listening or when you watch the video, for inviting me to create a trail of grace in our lives at home in Cedarburg on Linwood Lane. 2005, Bismarck, North Dakota. I was training Snap-on franchises up in that cold, weary land, and November 18th through the 20th, I was in my hotel room on that Friday night, and Deb's dad's been dying of pancreatic cancer. He's been fighting it for a while. Next thing you know, I felt this sense that Ed was there in the room. I could almost see him. That next morning on Saturday, I jumped up, I got in my rental car, and I went to the airport to see if I could change my plane. Something was pushing my heart to get home quickly. Well, the airport people said I couldn't change my flight. It was non-refundable, and it was Northwest, as we called them back then, if you traveled a lot. So I left the airport, I went downtown, I stopped downtown with tears in my eyes, I prayed to God, and I said, God, I got to get home. And at that moment, I heard this little voice say, call them. It's like, call them? Anybody ever tried to call the airport to change the flight? So I called Northwest, 800 number, and a gentleman answered the phone. That was a miracle. And I told him my situation. He says, no problem, I understand. You understand? He goes, when do you want to go home today? And I said, no, that's way too fast. I got to let people know what I'm doing. I said, how about tomorrow morning, which would have been the Sunday, the 20th? He booked me on a flight. I got home by noon. I picked up my car, and I went to stop at St. Luke's on the way to Cedarburg, and there's Deb's dad. He's sitting up in the bed, and he goes, I didn't think you were in town. I didn't either, Ed. He looked at me and said, now's not a good time. I said, it's never a good time when you're fighting cancer in your room. I left there, and that's about the time I called Debbie and said, Debbie, I'm in town. I'm heading home. Call your mom, call your brother, call your sister. We all need to get to St. Luke's today. So I know I freaked her out a little bit. I got home in Cedarburg. We quickly got back in the car. I took her to St. Luke's. They all showed up. They stayed the night. I went home to take care of our 5 kids as cats. November 21st, he took his last breath. You want to talk about a God moment? It's when God uses you for others to make sure I could be there and get them home. My stories, folks, come from the heart, so if I get a little choked up, it's all right. 2008, I meet Robert Ian at Taco John's in Madison. He was ready to hand over the president of National Speakers Association chapter to me. So we were having a business meeting. He looked across the table and said, Larry, what's that big knot on your neck? I said, I don't know, but I think it might be cancer. He goes, my wife works for the #1 head and neck surgeon in the Midwest. I'm going to connect y'all. Next thing I knew, emails were flying around, and this doctor actually responded to my email. A few days later, I'm in talking to the #1 head and neck cancer surgeon in the Midwest. I had cancer. A few weeks later, I show back up. He tells me he has to do a biopsy. He does it. He looks me in the face and said, I'll call you. Call me? So he called. He said, Larry, you got cancer. What? And I kind of figured that. See, God used the God moment not for me, but for Robert to play a part in my life. See, some of our God moments are not for us, my friends. They're for others. And I would say most are for others. Let's speed up the track. 2012, I fought my cancer, and there's many more God moments, but you guys only gave me 10 minutes or so. 2012, Debbie gets cancer, 7.5-hour surgery. As I'm waiting, I hear God say, just be a friend. Be her passenger. It's easy to say, I know what you're going through. I've been through a chemo, radiation, surgery, the feeding tube people. But no, just be her friend. So I did. I listened. Today's title is called Simply Listen and Serve. If you don't leave here with nothing else today, other than the hope I hope to land in your life, write that down. Simply listen and serve. 2013, Debbie gets cancer again, another cancer. All the doctors looked scared, so we were scared. But we had faith then, because at Freighter, they sent Debbie to the faith clinic, the one thing she needed the most. God's moments are working all around us every day of our life, my friends. 2013, she goes through another cancer. This time the doctor comes out and sees he got it. I said, got what? He goes, I got the tumor. He shows me on his iPhone. I asked him if he'd send me a picture. I'm sick. But it went in our third book to let him know that we got the cancer. Let's speed up the track a little bit. 2020. February 17th, I get a text from my brother. We're from Arkansas. They're down there, I'm up here for some ungodly reason. February 17th, I get a text about 3 o'clock saying, Larry, the doctors are coming in. My mother had open heart surgery on New Year's Day of 2020. She never left the hospital. They told her not to do it, but she chose to do it. She said she figured that was the best move to have more time with us. She never left the hospital. They moved her around. February 17th, I get a text today. My brother David says, Larry, the doctor's coming in tomorrow at 3 o'clock. We hope you can be there. And I'm thinking, that's 24 hours. I've been going back and forth, so I had a ticket already booked with Southwest Airlines. So at that moment at our table, I prayed, and I said, God, what do I do? And then I heard a message. I went and got my Bible, and I read a message that I probably whizzed over before, but it never set, and that was John 14:1, where he talked about, I've gone to prepare a place for you. I instantly knew I had to get home, so I called the 800 number for Southwest Airlines. Somebody answered the phone. They had me on a plane out of Milwaukee at 6. I got into Little Rock by noon, ate lunch. I have to eat lunch. I made it to Baptist Hospital in time, and at 3 o'clock the doctors came, and we had to make a decision together. But I was there. I was there because I simply listened. Are you listening? Are you listening every moment of the day when God is speaking to you constantly? Not always about you or me, about others. I was there with my mom because I listened. A God moment. They're happening all around us. I'll speed it up just a little bit. We'll dip into 2018 and through 2022. I met a lady at the Salvation Army, and we were sitting there, and I was doing a talk for them about my last book, Your Life Matters, How to Get Out of the Life You Don't Want, Live Life You Want. And she goes, my men could use your book. And I'm thinking, your men? How many men you got? And then she explained to me she worked in the prisons. I said, well, come out to my car. I'm a traveling sales guy. So I opened the trunk and I give her a bunch of books. Next thing you know, I'm invited into the prisons to teach my program, Your Life Matters. I start changing lives, a God moment. Meeting Heather at the Salvation Army. Before that, I met this little lady downstairs, my publisher, who said, Larry, I like your book. You ought to come to the Salvation Army. Isn't it amazing how God aligns us with people every day of our life if we stop and smell the roses? If we simply listen and serve. Since then, I've been doing programs, Rick Warren programs, Celebrate Recovery. And then they asked me, would you preach in the chapel? Well, I'm a guy who's always said yes. I think that's what got me from Arkansas to Atlanta to New York to here and everywhere else in my life. I said yes. Since then, I've been referred to the women's prison. I do chapel services there and teach programs. I listen, a God moment, connecting. We're all here for someone. Someone needs someone, and everyone needs someone. Everyone needs God in their life. Sometimes we have to be the walking testimonial, not just in words, but in our actions. 2013, Guatemala, I'm worn out, I'm tired. We're training transformation tables in a third world country. I did my morning session. I was so tired. I blame it on the cancer sometimes. I'm sitting in the hallway looking at the elevators. The elevators are not closing. I pray to God, God, what do I do? Do I go get in line and get an interpreter and go out again? I need rest to be my best for you. The elevator stayed open. That was a God moment. I walked into the elevator shut, I hit floor 6, I went up, I got rest, I came back down around 4:35, and our team's running around saying, we need a coach and we need an interpreter. The leader of the Boy Scouts needs someone tonight. There was a lady who was my interpreter who broke her shoe earlier. She goes, my shoe's broke, but I think I can do it. I raised my hand and said, I'm well rested. God knew he needed me later. It wasn't for me. It was for the Boy Scouts when we taught on the value of forgiveness and listening as they rolled and they cried about how they're not listening to their own kids. There's God moments all around us. 2021 in Dominican Republic, training transformation. I meet a little lady by the name of Rachel. She's so scared. She's 19. We're going in. She's hooked up with some Southern talking guy, and we're going to go change the world in Dominican Republic. We rode 2 hours to our place. She never said a word. She was scared. We got out of the car, and I heard God say, talk to her. I asked Rachel, I said, Rachel, let me say something to you before we go into this room. You're okay. You're going to be okay. You stepped up to change your world at 19. We did our program on the way back. She never shut up. She told me her whole life story in that car on the way back. And then she told me her name was Rose. And what I realized then, God allowed me to see a rose open up. Friends, God moments are waiting for you. When I sat at that table, I looked at that thing and I said, holy cow, there's 48 years of those. 1987, when I got this Volunteer Excellence Award for the state of Arkansas and got to show up at the governor's mansion with old Hillary Clinton to get this award, my mama was by my side. I started listening. Everyone has a God moment. If it hasn't happened yet, slow down and listen. He told me the other day, I'm preparing for a couple chapel services. He goes, listen more during prayer. Listen more, ask less. My message to you is simply listen and serve. Simply listen to what God says to you. Find God time in your life. Find private time. Go for a walk. I walk every morning. I try to convert as many people as I can. If you will listen. Not only is it the title of my next book, because God gives me a word every day. I hope he gives you one every year. Every year I get a word. In 2017, 2018, it was listen and serve. 2019, I said, well, God, can it not be both? Every year I get a little word. And then I try to live my life that whole year. Because they say it takes 21 days or more to correct a habit or start a good habit. My timing's up. I pray today, my wish for you is that one day when you reach your heavenly home, based on your deeds for others and how you led more people to Christ and you reached out, I'll go anywhere. It's Papua New Guinea in December if I get my visa. Someone's going to run up to you. When you meet Peter at the gate, and he opens up his iPad and sees if you're there. Oh, yeah, you're there, Larry. You can go on now. You're there, sir. I know you're there. You're doing a lot of good in the world. We all are. And somebody runs up to you and says it was you who invited me here. Be one where someone else, when someone, God says, what did you do with my son? Hopefully we can say we shared him with everybody that crossed our path. So one day someone will run up to you in heaven and say it was you. It was you. Those here in the room, those there online, it was you who invited me here. Simply listen for what God wants you to do and serve others every day of your life. And the blessings and the God moments will exceed mine. And I got 48 years of them, and I didn't even know it till I was about 20 years ago. So from Arkansas, we learn slow. I thank you for your time. Paul, I thank you for inviting me. And my wish for all of you is that you simply listen and serve. My time. Thank you.